starting with you, M Kelley. Tell us a little bit about yourself as an artist, and kind of how you found yourself on this project.
Yeah, hi. It's nice to be here with everybody tonight. Yeah, I'm M. Some of you also know me as Megan. And yeah, I was approached about the project, and I was very interested in participating in it because for me, very much a lot of my work is about community. When I describe what I do, I talk about myself as being a world builder, whether that's building fictional worlds or whether that's building real physical worlds that we all engage in. So I work with cities, I work with institutions, and I work with neighborhoods and communities to build spaces for creative dialogue. So the prospect of coming in and working directly with the community to talk about an issue that is highly relevant today, always has been highly relevant, and is also deeply embedded within our idea of community and our idea of citizenship was very important to me. It was important to come into that and begin to have those conversations, and more importantly, make myself available to listen to parts of the conversation that maybe I didn't personally know or wasn't aware of. I wanted to see as much as possible about the bridge building that is important to my work.
All right, thank you, M. Phyllis, I only recently met you just yesterday or a couple of days ago, so I'd love to hear just a little bit about you as well.
Not much to know. I'm a native. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining. I'm a native. I was born in Tennessee, in a small town in Pulaski, Tennessee, but I've lived in Nashville all of my life. I'm currently working full-time for HCA and in the behavioral health, and I'm a clinical mental health counseling student with the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. And so a friend, a sister, a confidant, trying to be a budding entrepreneur right now in the midst of all of that. So not much to know, but so honored to be a part of this project. So thank you. Absolutely,
thank you. And I guess we can start with the first question for you, M. What made you decide to participate or even be a part of this project? Why was this relevant to you?
Yeah, so this is relevant to me because though my ancestors have lived on what is considered American soil for generations, our actual ability to participate in the system that governs us is relatively recent. So Native Americans were able to start to trade assimilation, so removing tribal affiliations for citizenship in about 1924 with the Dawes Act, the Dawes Act was 1887, getting my numbers wrong. But 1924 was actually when the right to vote was given technically to all Native Americans. That process really didn't actually happen so that Native Americans had the ability to vote in every state until about 1965 with the Voting Rights Act. And it wasn't until about 1980 that Native Americans were even allowed to run for office. So even as we go through what we go through today, like there's still aspects where voting protections have been stripped away, or it's hard for Native Americans to reach voting polling places and be able to participate in the system. So voting as itself as an issue is very important to me historically, but is also really important to me continuing to make sure that everybody's voice is included, especially people, like I said, who are governed by a system. And so for me, like being part of this project was really about connecting with other communities that have been treated as the other within a system that oversees their right to participate, their right to enact with the land, their right to engage with different rights. And so I had worked previously with Project Return, which works with people coming out of the criminal justice system and helps them through the process of reentering society, reestablishing rights to vote, restoring, finding job opportunities, basically working through that process and finding a place of being active. And so I had worked with them previously doing sketch notes, which are basically people talk, I draw. And that was an incredibly meaningful place for me to be, in terms of hearing stories of a community that, though I had not been personally a part of, have come close to throughout my life. And so I wanted to return to that community and talk about that issue, especially with the idea of disenfranchisement, so the removal of the right to vote after a criminal sentence, and the restoration of those rights if it's possible. I wanted to talk about that issue, and I wanted to represent the voices of people who are going through that process, have been through that process, or who will never have the chance to go through that process, and be able to be open to that conversation and help amplify that a little bit more.
So, M, you began that process by reaching out to Project Return. And then connecting ultimately with Phyllis. So, Phyllis, why was it important for you to share your story through this process?
The timing was actually perfect because a friend approached me and she told me about a project that was coming up. And before then, I recently had my voting rights restored a few months prior to that. And so I thought this would be perfect. So this information had to be shared. So I don't believe that I was granted such a gift if I wasn't supposed to share it. And so I wanted to share the process of what I went through, and the obstacles and the paperwork and the disappointments and the setbacks. It was a lot, but also too the joys. It wasn't all bad. It was a long process. It was a tedious process, but it was some things that I had to do in place before. The voting rights restoration process was actually the last piece of the puzzle. And so I felt like somebody needed to hear the information. And to be honest, I don't believe that I could fully embrace what I had as this gift if I didn't give it away. So to me, it was my responsibility to give it to those who had no idea how this process worked, or sort of per se the red tape they had to go through to get to this level. So it was perfect timing for me. It was almost like a gift on top of a gift. And so I was grateful to be able to share the information. I didn't know it would turn into, when they said project, I was thinking maybe something on this. I had no idea the level and the magnitude of what it would turn out to be. So I'm grateful to be a part of it.
We definitely appreciate you and your willingness to share. So what, if you wouldn't mind kind of summarizing a little bit, what did you share with M?
Megan and I connected last January, I believe. That's the last email. I had to do a little research. It was last January, so it was a while. And it was just some questions. She wanted to know what the bureaucratic process was for me to get to voting rights restoration. And so I had to go back and tell a little bit of the backstory to get to that place. Because like I said, that's the last piece of the puzzle. But when I was 18, I registered to vote. That was my first time ever registering to vote, and I got to vote, participate in the process. And all within the same year, I lost my right to vote. I became involved in some activities that led to a life of incarceration, and unfortunately, a criminal record that followed me for many years after that. And so, fast forward several years, I on a bet from a friend, a childhood friend, decided to apply for a pardon. And so that's what led to my getting my voting rights restored. So it was a lot that was detailed. It was a lot of work to have been done. The voting rights restoration process wasn't the hard part. The hard part was getting past the obstacles, the labels that are put up on people sometimes who have a criminal background and they're trying to be separated from that life to live a new life. That's the obstacle, that's the hard part. But if you're blessed enough to get beyond that, the voting rights restoration process is almost like the gift that you get for going through that process.
Yeah, that's very well said. So in hearing that, M, you, I assume, were pretty moved by Phyllis's account of the process. So how did that inspire your work? So how did you sort of shape your artistic process around that?
Yeah, so as I was going through the interview process with different people, I was getting different parts of the story. So I was talking with people who were going through it, people who had been through it, and then people who would never have the opportunity to. And so for myself, I knew that I wanted to do a series of flags for the exhibition because flags are deeply tied to identity. They're tied to representation of belonging. They're utilitarian, they're functional, and they're really these things that are kind of depicting struggle and joy and celebration and hardship. And so I wanted to do the series of flags, and I wanted to, each of the flags is associated with a different ritualistic direction, which has a specific color and a specific meaning. So as I was hearing people's stories, I was thinking about how those fit together, and Phyllis's story really connected with me, especially for this idea of unlocking so the direction of east, the color of yellow, this which symbolically talks about this idea of vision, but also the active struggle that we go through in order to make vision become reality. So it immediately hit home for me in terms of fitting in with this kind of larger understanding and way of engaging with the world. And so working with her story, I wanted to depict, you'll notice on the flag for Unlock that there are two blue check marks. Blue green is like the color of peace, the peace that we get when we participate in something that's bigger than ourselves. So the blue of those check marks is kind of referring to that, but those check marks themselves is this idea of, Phyllis talked about all of the paperwork, all of the double checking, all of the going back, all of the having to refile, all of the having to do, and this idea of, having to get double check marks on everything, essentially, like checking everything twice, having everything affirmed multiple places, and all of those extra like big steps that happen. Definitely as thinking about the stories and thinking about the different stories, I didn't want to focus on any particular crime because I didn't want to focus on the so much images and so much media around disenfranchisement and restoration focuses on images of crime and images of jail and images of people in the middle of their sentence. And I did want to address the weight of that, but I didn't want to make that the focus, because the whole point of the restoration of voting rights and the restoration of the ways that we ask people who are coming out of the criminal justice system to re-enter society, we're asking them in every other way to participate as a citizen. And so I didn't want to focus on a crime for which time had already been served. I wanted to focus on the impact of the community, and I wanted to focus on that engagement with a larger conversation. So I chose to work with an image that was less dealing with a particular face or a particular crime or a particular depiction, and more something that was a universal icon, something that could stand in for Phyllis's story in very key ways. And you can see that through all the papers kind of going off and that mad shuffle to get everything done, and this progression of time that's framed by multiple paper. But I also wanted to make it more iconic and more universal, to speak to the process that many people are going through, and the kind of work that happens. Like I said, I chose flags for their functional representation of identity, and I chose the aspect of doing printmaking, so rolling ink on a carved block and pressing onto the fabric, which is totally designed to be weatherproof and could be hung if it needed to be hung outside. Because I do believe that printmaking is the voice of the people, and when we engage in processes of citizenship, voting, or just other ways that we engage with government, that is our voices being heard. That is the voice of the people also. So.
Great. And you also mentioned in your artist statement a couple of things that stood out. Among those, you did mention why you chose printmaking specifically. And you also mentioned, like you just said, the images of incarceration. So I think those decisions were very, very powerful in sort of how you went about that. So Phyllis, what were you sort of made aware of the progress of what M was working on, or was this all kind of a surprise to you at the end?
It was a little bit of both. It was kind of a surprise. I knew that she was working after our conversation initially in January. I knew that she was working on some things, and she said, let me get back to you. And then lo and behold, here comes coronavirus 2020. And so, which put everything on hold. And so, but she reached out to me, and I was honestly on break at work, and when I received her email, and I was like, it's so great to hear from her several months later. But when I did, and she actually sent the article, her process, the video that is on YouTube, and what the flags look like. And when I saw that it was inspired by, and when I saw the words, I I was in my car, I cried, because it was just like, it was like having your voting rights restored all over again. It was almost like a confirmation to the confirmation. And so that worked for me. And so I sent her an email immediately and told her that she told me about our webinar this evening, and I said I'd be more than happy, actually honored to participate. So here it is, another gift on top of the gift, on top of the already gift. And so it's the gift that keeps on giving for me.
Okay. And with that in mind, I was thinking that, of course, going through your process, Phyllis, I imagine Project Return had a lot to do with kind of guiding you through that. Was that, how did they play into that part?
I was employed with Project Return, and let me just tell you, they do some incredible work, wraparound services, caring and loving on the men and women who to lead a full and free life after incarceration. I was already in my process when I was working there, and so I had the pardon. I received a pardon from Governor Haslam in December of 2018. So it was actually before I started working there. I started working on my voting rights restoration after the fact. And so I was engaging with the staff and telling them about the story, always supportive, always encouraging. And the clients, the participants that they work with, is such important work. They're also, dedicated to the important process of helping these men and women restore their voting rights, because sadly, less than 1% of participants that are involved with Project Return actually get their voting rights restored, if at all. And so, the work that they do, like I said, the wraparound services that they provide to the men and women, it's unmatched. It's necessary, and they provide information to the participants so they can know. Knowing is power. That's what I know for sure. And there were a lot of things that I didn't know when I embarked upon my journey. But let me just tell you, after I received my voting rights, and they were fully restored, and I received my voting rights card, there was the directions, the operations manager of Project Return so graciously went with me, and that was my first time voting in 31 years. And so in a Tennessee state and local election. And so I was very grateful for that, very grateful to her. And shout out to Miss Bailey Weiberg. I wanted to say her name because she's done some incredible work, and I'm grateful to her and for all the work that Project Return does. Let me just tell you, if anyone is interested in the work that they do, I truly encourage you to reach out to them and ask them any questions about this process. If you were a loved one or somebody that you love or care about is interested, to please reach out to them. Their website is Project Return Inc. all one word, .org, or you can call them at 615-327-9654. They participated in the joy of me having these voting rights restored. And so I'm very grateful to them for wanting to help me put my story out there. Hopefully it'll encourage any of their participants to do the same, to never give up and keep going, no matter what. And so hopefully their participants will take something from this, and I thank them. I can't thank them enough.
Wow, that's really well said. We appreciate the work that Project Return does. So it's really great to actually hear that from somebody who has benefited directly. I see that we have a couple of Q&A questions popping up, Megan.
We do. Renee asks, what does Phyllis say to young people who don't bother to vote? And she also applauds you for voting and for caring.
Hi, Renee. We have to, I'm not really sure, but we have to engage them in a way to let them know how voting is going to affect the changes that are going on in their community. You know, if you want something in your community that's not there, or you want to have a voice, or even just participate in the political process, you have to learn what it's about. You have to learn what it's about, what it's for, who's running in your district, why are they running, state the issues that are important to you, whether it's education or it's healthcare or it's jobs or it's opportunities or whatever it is. We have to get them involved and engage with them some sort of way. I'm not sure how, but there are lots and lots of organizations that will help with that. I am trying to become involved on the ground floor, on the advocacy level, starting with self-advocacy first, and to hopefully get the young people involved and let them know how important this process is, that their voice does count, their vote does matter. And so that's up to us. It's the generation before us provided a platform for us. And so now we are the generation before them to provide a platform for them. So it's here again, the gift that keeps on giving. And so how we do that, I'm not really sure, but if anybody else has any ideas, let me know, put me on the list, sign me up, I'm ready to go.
Also, I see we have a couple of other Q&A, but I know Megan offered to pull up the flags to show those so that we could see them. So Megan, if you would be able to do that for us. Terrific.
That?
Yes, thank you. And so the first one that we saw was the one specifically inspired by Phyllis's story?
That is correct.
Okay, great. And then it looks like we have, well, Megan, well, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
well, wait, M Kelley? So many
No
Megans.
worries.
Is there anything you would like to say as we kind of go through those?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about, again, kind of the symbolism behind. So with the lock flag, this was dealing directly with the story of someone who, based off of their type of felony, will never be able to have their rights restored to vote with the system as it currently is. And so this was dealing a lot with their frustration and their struggle, especially with the idea that in every other way they are expected to show up as a full citizen, but that they had no way of engaging the voting process that was affecting them and governing them, and a lot of the issues that they cared about and felt strongly about. And again, as I said, especially with a lot of my ancestors going through similar things, their story also really resonated. And this color is specifically talking about anger. It's talking about anger specifically that is kind of undirectional anger, like anger that doesn't have necessarily an outlet for expression. And so it does deal very directly with the idea of confinement, emotional confinement, as well as a physical confinement, such as incarceration. And this is tied to the southernmost direction. And so with this flag, with burn, this in some ways is, I guess you could say, the flag that speaks the most to myself and the struggles that my people have been through in terms of just how the Native community has had to engage voting. For a long time, if you wanted to have any kind of voting rights or citizenship rights, it was tied to military service and tied to a loss of tribal affiliation. So it is this idea of struggling with losing your participation in some ways and gaining participation in others. The color red is tied to the direction of west, and it's tied to this idea of action and of aggressive action sometimes that is very directed and very targeted and very focused, which military service, which has been a way for many of my ancestors to participate, is in itself very directed, incited action. So that's where this one kind of comes from. I guess that you could say that this is me. And this last flag, the colors of kind of blue, green, deal with, like I said, that idea of the peace that we get through participation. And so this is directly tied to this idea of voting and this larger conversation of participating in something that is bigger than us, and the sense of peace and wholeness that is derived from this kind of directed action. This is associated with the direction north. And so this is very much speaking to this idea of people actively engaging in a system, and engaging us in a system with the belief that engagement leads towards a better system. It leads towards a better outcome. And that I personally believe that the more voices we have that engage that system, the better that system is going to be. And engaging not just in voting, but in running for office and being actively engaged in a civic system. It's, it's not just enough to have votes, we also have to have representation. You can also see a hint of that yellow in there as well, because that is a struggle, it is a hardship. It is a corridor that is flanked with trial. But I do believe that ultimately it leads us to a better place. The nice thing is, what I love about this now being actually installed is that these are points of a compass. They do relate, like I said, to ritualistic direction. So when you go and you stand in the center of these flags, like, you are also being part of that compass. You are part of that sacred mindset, that sacred center, and a center that is both a wholeness and a possibility, that you too can also choose this direction that you choose to move forward in. So I'm not gonna, you can't see me pointing, but I would be pointing at the blue flag. I hope that everyone will take their opportunity to vote, not just in the big election coming up, but in all of these ways that we have to engage moving forward, everywhere from local to state as well as federal levels.
Great, thank you, M Kelley. And I think we have some more Q&A questions if we want to go back to those, Megan.
Mary asks about Project Return. Phyllis, do you know what percentage of formerly incarcerated individuals have access to their services, or does everyone have access upon release?
I don't want to answer that. I really rather I want to say everyone, but I do want you to reach out and call to have correct information on that. But please, if Mary wants the information, Mary, their website is Project Return Inc., all one word, all lowercase, .org, or call 615-327-9654.
And I did put the link to the Project Return website in the chat, so you can click there and be taken to their website. Alice wanted to continue the conversation about encouraging young non-voters to participate in the election, and she suggests that maybe She says, maybe appeal to young non-voters who feel their one vote doesn't matter as something they understand and participate in already. Crowdsourcing as a metaphor. One vote plus all the others make the difference.
I will follow up on that and say that I think that, I know I personally am driven by doing an action and seeing things happen, whether it's physically making something and having something tangible or seeing the effects of something. I would definitely urge in engaging younger voters, being transparent with this process, like being able to see those process in action, whether that's at a council meeting or I think we've definitely seen a lot of action happening with the protests and with the engagement on this other level in the past couple of months. And we can see the ways that this action has led towards changes, that there is effect that is happening. So being able to see those tangible effects and also I think putting it in context, when we think about major movements towards rights and justice, these things didn't happen within a week. Our social media cycle often makes us feel like things need to be immediate. But, most of these movements take, months, years. There's still, like I said, there's still things that are still in process and still being worked around, even for centuries of struggle. So it's important for us to think about the work that we do, not just within that one individual, the one person showing up, the one action someone takes, but as part of a bigger chain of something that has been happening and is going to continue to happen. And that every link in that chain makes it stronger.
I will add that if Teams for Equality, for beautiful young teenage women, can organize a march with thousands upon thousands of people in the streets of Nashville, I have faith in the youth. They can pull this off. They can do this. One Twitter feed brought out thousands and thousands of people. Hopefully they will do the same thing and turn out to vote. But with that kind of encouragement, I have faith in them. They can pull this off.
And I'll just say that I should mention, as part of this project, we were actually, we had the idea of connecting with Project Return because they are a community partner of ours. So the Frist Art Museum and Project Return do have an existing partnership that goes back a few years, and we're thankful for that connection. So we definitely appreciate that it's sort of manifested itself through this project. And I see, well, actually, I'll ask another question of you both, since I don't have that many more. Now, as we know, this has been a pretty challenging time for any number of reasons here in the country and all over the world. Of course, dealing with the pandemic, and then dealing with so much unrest coming about with the killing of Black men at the hands of the police, killing of Black women at the hands of the police. At least those being the stories that we are most familiar with. But what does that do for our belief in the process? And this is a question for both of you. Do you ever, and I'll start with Phyllis, do you ever find yourself, your belief in voting and the process in general sort of wavering? Where do you sort of find the ability to find the benefit in voting?
I did it first. I was leery. When it's easy to say that you will participate in the process when you're able to participate in the process. It's just a different ballgame now that I am able to. It's my civic duty to do that. That's what I need to do. It's easy to say what you would or what you would not do if you had the ability. You know, it's like somebody wanted to drive to work, but they don't have a car. They would love to if they had a car. So, but to keep faith in the process, for me, prayer and a powerful village. I have a village. I have a serious village who support me, who talk to me, who straighten me out when I need to be straightened out. They tell me the truth. They stand in my corner. They wrote letters on my behalf. They do it all. And I couldn't ask for any better people to support me. And let me just say that I believe nothing I hear and only half of what I see. And what I mean by that is that I did my own footwork. I didn't rely on people to tell me that, oh, you can't vote, or you have a felony, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. And it's easy for people to say, and I wasn't satisfied with that. So what I did for myself was to go and seek the information for myself. I needed to hear it from the powers that be. If it was a process that I needed to go through and it took 6 months, then we got 6 months. If it took 90 days, I did what I had to do in those 90 days. I didn't give up in the process, but I was not satisfied myself with people telling me what I could and what I could not do. This was important to me. And I thought, if I've gotten to this level, why not keep going? Why can't I have my voting rights restored? Why can I not, participate in the voting process, in the democratic process? So just for me, that's what it takes for me, but definitely prayer and a village. My village is awesome, and pray. I had to do the footwork, do my part, and leave it alone. And what was meant for me would come to me. That's just my belief. It may not work for everyone, but it worked for me. And so I'm satisfied with that.
M?
Yeah, so I would say for me, what kind of keeps my faith in the process, and especially with everything that's been going on this year. For me, it's very much about this idea that, again, we have to look at this work in the context of something that's larger than ourselves. This is work, like I said, that's been happening long before, and this is work that is going to continue after. Whether that is still working through struggles or working through new challenges, or more likely a little of both. So it is about remembering that as a change worker, that we are, again, one part of something that's bigger, and that our actions, however minute they may seem, are something that is building into larger momentum. I'm incredibly grateful to various communities of support that I have that help remind me of this, and also help show up for important issues and for important dialogues, and who allow us all to find space to step back when we need, because we know that there are people who are committed, who are also coming forward into it. I definitely encourage you to find communities of support for your own issues and your own challenges, and you can always reach out and say hi too. I'll always be happy to to be there as an ear. I also, I think the biggest thing that kind of keeps my faith in the system is, like I said earlier, I do think that the more voices that we have that participate, not just in voting, because I think it's clear to see that voting does not always equal representation as much as we would like it to. So the work of running for office, supporting BIPOC people who are running for office, who are providing a diversity of voices at the table, and who are making a more inclusive conversation, a more conscious conversation, I think is an incredibly vital way that we can stay engaged. And I think that we can also, as we see that change happen, and we're seeing that change happen, and it's amazing. Like that diversity, that expression, all of the voices that come to this table are bringing new ways of looking at issues. They're bringing new worldviews that help us find solutions, and they're bringing new communities that are offering their own wisdoms into it. And I think that is, to me, like that is the most hopeful place I can be, is recognizing the change that is happening, and in the change that is happening, seeing the change that is coming. And that feels good to see, that the struggles that I go through are not going to be necessarily the struggles that people who come after me are going to go through. And that makes it worth it.
Great. And then I see that we have a couple of Q&A questions. Let's see.
Yes, we've got one from Jerry about House Bill 8005, which I believe is the bill that allows penalties, including the loss of voting rights for protesters. And he was wondering if you had any thoughts on that. He says, I think the flags are so timely and important right now with the attempts to make protesting seen as criminal activity.
Yeah, so I'll speak a little bit on that. So something that is, I think, not super commonly known, but one of the felonies that was not able to have rights restored after July 1st, 2006 was felonies involving essentially interference with government operations. So misconduct involving public officials, public employees, bribery, so on and so forth. So the groundwork for what is happening right now has been there for some time. And this is why I think it's really important for us to be engaged in the different amendments and different processes that are happening. I personally think that it is kind of a shame for that bill that's being done it makes me sad that there are people who are so afraid of a conversation that they will do anything to make it not happen. I think that is a shameful way to approach what is a difficult challenge. And I really hope that there can be change there. And I really hope that there would be change there on all sides, but I think there needs to be change there pushed, especially.
Thank you, M. Are there any other Q&A questions?
Yes. What does Phyllis feel or think about when she looks at the flags and the flag that you're the inspiration for?
I guess shock and disbelief for one, that it actually came to fruition. Just remembering, it helps me to remember the process of what the process was actually like to get to that place. Grateful, humbled, very humbled. Can't wait to get a copy. And that's Megan's going to make sure that I get one because I want to be able to frame it and hang it and not forget about the process. But very grateful, very humbled. I love the name because vision and struggle is exactly what it was. Having a vision all at the same time, but struggling all at the same time to see that vision come to fruition. So I'm grateful and thank you for the work, Megan, that you did to produce these. They're beautiful and I'm honored to have one.
Oh, I'm very grateful for your story and just your willingness to be open with it. Like that, like a flag is nothing. Like that gift you have is everything.
Thank you. And is there anything else that we should, or any other Q&As that we should answer?
Yes, we've got a couple more questions that have come in. From Alice, how do I talk to other non-voters about the importance of our democratic processes without alienating them? Do anyone have thoughts on that?
Well, I think they need to be open. I mean, I think they at least need to be open for the conversation. It's just a conversation. If they want change, they may or may not. My job is not to make someone to participate in the process, but I would feel left out if I didn't. I've been left out long enough. 31 years was a long enough time for me. So I'm ready to participate in the process, but not everybody is so willing. If they are open for a conversation, I say move forward. But if they're not, that's unfortunate because I feel like they're missing out. That's everybody's own. That's their own. Everybody has free will, and so either they participate or they don't. As a friend, without alienating them, like I said, it's a conversation, and communication is a two-way street. So either they're willing to participate or they're not. And quite frankly, I like to dialogue with people who are open, just like Megan and I had a conversation about dialogue, She didn't know my story. I didn't know the process of how her art worked, but look how beautifully it came together. And so what's the harm in a conversation? I don't know how to directly answer that, but at least make sure the individual is open. No changes have to be made, just a conversation. Beautiful things happen from just a conversation.
I think also to kind of follow in with that is, I think sometimes we shy away from conversations that are challenging or difficult because we have fear, and that is an incredibly human reaction. Sometimes we choose inaction because we don't know how to engage, and again, like that fear is very human. I encourage people, regardless of what they're doing, to think about the bridges to build between people. That we, regardless of where we stand in terms of words or statements, those come from a very internal place. They come from same basic motivations, same fundamental ways that we engage with the world. And I would encourage looking for kind of like those grains, where some of that hesitance or reluctance or resistance comes from, and seeing if there are ways to connect with that feeling. And often, sometimes it's, asking questions and answering questions can be hard when you're asking somebody something that is as direct and complicated as, why not? So I encourage being the feeling of being understood, the feeling of being accepted is important and valuable. And once that trust relationship can start to be built, then sometimes you can start having those deeper conversations, those broader conversations. And that's where you can start, when you start getting over those feelings of oftentimes fear and helplessness and disillusionment and detachment and disassociation. Once you can start getting past those, then you can start looking at what potential solutions are. Is it because they don't know where to start? Is it because they don't know who represents them? Is it because they don't have a ride to get to the polls, or they're not sure what they need to bring? Or, regardless of where the roadblocks are happening, I do think it takes time, it takes patience, it takes trust. But I think those conversations can start. Just connect first as human beings. And once you've begun to build those, you can move forward and deeper into those.
A couple more questions for M. Do you mind sharing the nation or tribe of your ancestors with the audience?
Happy to. So I am Wajaji on my father's side, and on my mother's side, throughout direct family and extended family, it's kind of throughout the Southwest. So a lot of the Pueblo peoples, a lot of the Diné. So.
Thank you. And do you plan on continuing this series of work? And if so, how will it expand?
Yeah, so I am currently working on a set of smaller flags right now that are kind of processing and working through my feelings with all of the recent movements and conversations that are happening, specifically around the idea of saying the names of people who've been victims to police brutality, and looking at the justice system that engages and how it unequally engages. So I've been working on that. Another kind of big shift for me is just with COVID, I am a little bit more limited in terms of where I go and how I access materials. So I've been looking at a lot of natural dyes as a way of sourcing medium to create the fabric that creates the flags, but also as a way of connecting more deeply with the land that is here. Even though this is not my ancestral land necessarily, it is a way for me to honor that connection and that dialogue that's present.
Thank you. And I just have one more question to close out. I'm interested, and we'll start with you, M. What would you say you learned about yourself through this process?
Let's see, learn about myself. I think I definitely, I feel like I am always happy to talk shop. And I feel like I am consistently and always practicing the learning of listening. So this was another good place for me to step back, shut up, and be present. But also just in terms of, again, I think it was really interesting for me in a way that wasn't really a surprise, but was a good reminder of just the ways that, you know, the process of restoration is different in state to state. It's different in terms of what can be pardoned, what can be restored, why. If there is a process, if there, in some cases there's, you know, it might as well not be. And so for me, it was very much, it was a good fire to light, to, again, just kind of connect with a larger conversation, a larger struggle, and to have a sense of being able to shift the meter just a little bit. I sincerely hope that the choice of depicting the images, the choice of the flags will open up conversations for people. And it's made me work to be a better advocate to have those conversations too.
Phyllis, is there anything that you learned about yourself through this process? Oh, you're still muted.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That I am more resilient than I ever thought I was, for one. And I'm so grateful to be able to turn a story of shame into a story that could potentially help thousands of other people. I think that's what I'm most proud of. And so it doesn't have to be a badge of shame anymore. It's a story to be able to give to somebody else, so hopefully they can benefit. Hopefully it is the gift that keeps on giving. And so I think that's what I learned most about myself throughout the process, is to trust the process.
Great. I think that's perfectly said, and a great note on which to finish, I think. So thank you both so much, M Kelley and Phyllis Cross, for joining us this evening to tell us a little bit about the project and your part in it, and to share your story a little bit. So thank you. I'll turn it back over to Megan.
Thank you all. Thank you, Shaun. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, M Kelley, for joining us tonight. And thank you all for joining us this evening. If you have not seen the exhibition, We Count First-Time Voters, again, you can visit our website or visit us in person. We are open and are available for you all to reserve time tickets on our website, fristartmuseum.org. We're following social distance and safety protocols to hopefully make your visit as safe as possible. So we would love to see you in person at the Frist, or you can see us online at our next virtual program. You can see those on our website. You can follow us on social media or sign up for our e-newsletter to learn about future opportunities. Thank you all so much, and we hope you have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Some great comments in the chat. Thank you all for sharing.
Awkward Zoom finish. Zoom party.
I don't want to end it because there's some really nice chat.
Yeah.
I'm reading them before we go.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Megan, for bringing that to our attention. I just started kind of looking through those as well. But yes, thanks again to Phyllis and to M. We appreciate you. And thanks to everyone who was watching.
Yeah, thank you all. It's been wonderful getting to spend this time with you. Like I said, feel free to say hi. So I'm always up for a conversation.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for having me. Megan, thank you for everything. Shaun, Megan, Russ, thank you very much.
All right, well, I'm gonna close us out here.
Okay.
Have a great night.
All right.